Hello everyone, welcome to our home. This is Whole Homemaking and we're talking about how to be a fulfilled homemaker on a small budget. And today we are making an easy white bread recipe. And for me, this recipe works out to about 50 cents a loaf, which is why it makes me so angry when I go to the supermarket and see bread for $4, $5, $7, or even $9 for a loaf of bread. Bread is really foundational to our culture and it brings people together, can be a sign of welcome. So I think it's really important to have a recipe like this in your back pocket, especially during these inflation times. For this recipe, you need to have some warm water. I'm going to warm mine up on the stove. And we're going to activate yeast with warm water. The reason we do that is yeast is a living organism. It needs to be woken up and then it needs to be fed. And when it's fed, the byproduct of that is CO2, which gives you a fluffy loaf of bread instead of a flat pancake if you didn't have yeast or didn't have active yeast. This is another good way to test that the yeast is good. You can add some water to it and I'll show you what it looks like when it activates. We're going to have a few extra ingredients in this bread, nothing fancy. I have white sugar, I have any kind of oil, and I have some salt. The sugar provides a bit of extra boost for the yeast. The oil will make the bread softer, and the salt is what makes every food flavorful because our body needs the minerals. This is what the yeast looks like when it's activated. I'm using nothing fancy for flour, tout usage in Canada, all-purpose flour everywhere else. This bag is usually $10 or $12 and I can make 20 to 25 recipes of bread, bagels, muffins, whatever with it. So it works out to about 50 cents a recipe. So in the bowl, we have the yeast. We've added 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of oil, and I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of sugar. I'm going to mix that up until it's really kind of like a goopy substance. And then once we have the goop, we'll add a bit more flour till it's stiff and we'll start kneading it. So that's what the goop looks like. And I'm going to add 3 more cups of flour. This could vary. I find that bread is a bit temperamental in the sense of if you're in a dry environment, I'm in Canada in January, it's pretty much the driest time of year, you need a lot less flour than I would need in the summer because there's no water in the air. So the bread is just drier. So I've only added about 3 cups of flour here. Works for me, but if you're in a more humid climate or you're watching in the summer, you might need a little bit more to counteract the humidity, but really this recipe is kind of foolproof. When we're using instant commercial yeast, it's going to rise. It just might be a bit denser on the other end. I've got my Tex-Mex apron ready to go, which means it's time to do some kneading. This recipe really only requires 8 to 10 minutes of kneading. We need bread because it develops the gluten in the bread. So gluten, we all know, big buzzword. But gluten is a protein, and kneading the bread helps develop that protein, which is what makes bread chewy. We love that chewy kind of pull apart texture when we eat bread. and this is what makes that happen. If we didn't do it, we'd have a denser, kind of like almost a muffin texture, like that crumbly texture. So this will take about 8 to 10 minutes. I think I was closer to 8 because my daughter was getting pretty fussy. You can use any floured surface. I just use my counter, and by the end of it you really won't have any flour left on the counter anyway. This is what they call the shaggy stage of the dough, and then this is what it looks like at the end. Nice and smooth, not sticking to the counter. You can add a little more flour as you're kneading if you need it. Got my bench scraper from the dollar store. Great $4 to spend if you see one. And I'm just roughly cutting that in half because this is a 2-loaf recipe. This is reused parchment paper. Parchment paper is reusable as long as it's not got anything really baked onto it. I'm doing some shotgun shaping here. There's nothing really, not a lot of finesse going into my shaping here, but it just rises so quickly and so well that you don't really need to make it look too perfect right now. That's what it looks like. And after about an hour, we've got these nice risen loaves, and I'm going to pop them in the oven for 30 minutes at 350. I usually check it at 25. My oven runs hot, and I think I eventually let them go for 30, and you get this beautiful golden brown sandwich loaf. I really love to use this loaf for sandwiches during the week, to go with soup, to make tuna melts, to grate up and make my own tasty breadcrumbs to add to burgers, meatballs, fish cakes. The possibilities are really endless here. Thank you for watching our video. I'm really excited to start this channel. Please let us know in the comments what kind of videos you'd like to see. And this is me singing, composing a song for my nephew, who I'm going to meet for the first time in about a month. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you in the next one.
Baby in the land, he's a real happy boy, and he brings us all such joy. Steven is the sweetest baby in the land.